All right, we're back. All right, we're back. We're settling into the heavy stuff now. We've been talking about the hierarchy of power, but Koetting is starting to pull us down into the lower strata.
The basement of the spiritual world. It feels heavy.
Exactly. He's moving from the grand architecture of angels to something much more visceral. Look at how he describes these spirits of the dead. He says they don't have the cosmic stamina to reshape the stars like angels do. And this is the chilling part. He says they are incredibly fast and diligent when it comes to causing misery.
Fast and diligent. Like a specialized strike team for bad vibes.
Precisely. He claims they work specifically to cause unhappiness to the magician's enemy, and he gets really specific about the symptoms. He says it starts with nightmares and in some cases ends in suicide.
That's a heavy claim to drop without a disclaimer. He's not even talking about metaphor here. He's talking about a literal, biological end.
But see, that's the thing. He's differentiating the type of power. Angels are the long-term planners, the architects. These dead spirits, they're the insurgents. They don't care about the big picture of the cosmos. They just want to cause immediate localized chaos.
It sounds so predatory, like they're just feeding on the friction.
And then he pivots to what he calls wandering spirits. This is where he gets a bit more, well, let's say unstructured. He describes these ritual sessions in the Southwest desert. He's out there in the middle of the night, red sand, cactus silhouettes, just a circle of friends under a giant moon.
I can see it. A bunch of us probably arguing about whether the mood is too bright for a proper ritual, smoking cigarettes, just being antisocial in the desert.
Exactly. He says they gather, light up, and wait for this critical mass of adventure. He describes the summons. It's almost communal. We join hands as Dark Brothers. We call the forces of darkness to enter the circle.
Sounds like a very intense summer camp.
But look at the imagery he uses for the response. He says they'd see, through eyes or mine, countless images of spirits racing through the desert toward our circle, like a horde of frenzied rabbits trying to reach those who dared to call them, with noise and clamor.
Frenzied rabbits? That's such a strange, almost frantic way to describe a demonic manifestation. It's not this looming dark shadow, it's this overwhelming, chaotic swarm.
It's the lack of individual identity. That's the key. It calls them astral parasites later on, quoting Donald Michael Craig. They don't even know who they are. They're just energy formations.
Right, and that ties back to his earlier point about the subjective synthesis. He's saying these things are so low level they can barely move a Ouija board, but they can still overwhelm your senses.
Wait, so he's saying the most dangerous thing isn't a powerful demon with a plan, but a mindless swarm that just happens to be there?
Exactly. He says they lack the power to change destiny, but they can usurp your time and energy. They're the spiritual equivalent of a DDoS attack.
That actually makes a lot of sense psychologically. It's not the big trauma that breaks you, it's the constant, tiny, unpatterned intrusions.
But then, Seth, look at how he moves from that chaos back to the master. He says once you've mastered the principles, even the gods will appear at your throne to do your bidding. Talk about a massive power jump.
It's a huge leap. He goes from frenzied rabbits to divine omnipotence. But he tries to bridge it with this idea of preparatory work. He says you can't just show up to a ritual and wing it. You have to have absolute unwavering intention.
Here we go, the just believe part.
No, it's more technical than that. He's actually criticizing the internet era of magic here. He says, while we have all this info online, it's actually harder to find the golden grains of truth because there's too much noise. He tells this story about experimenting with mirrors trying to find a ritual to squeeze Satan into my room with all the smoke and flames.
I love that. Squeezing Satan into a room. That's such a DIY project.
He was getting bad advice. People telling him the mirror had to be at a 45-degree angle, or the sigil had to be perfectly centered. And then he hits on this brilliant, counterintuitive piece of advice. He says, forget the mirror, and understand that what you see before you is what you see before you.
That's a huge moment. It's moving from the mechanical, the angles, the tools to the perceptual. It's about the presence.
And he tells you how to study an entity. He says, ask about this entity as you would ask about a beautiful woman or a strong man. Trace the lines of her body, the strength of his gaze. He wants you to build a mental, visceral familiarity before the ritual even starts.
So, you've already met them in your mind, so when they show up, there's no shock. There's no stochative synthesis he mentioned earlier.
Exactly. And here's the warning, he ends this section with a heavy dose of secrecy. He says the moment you start broadcasting your workings to the world to look important, you're inviting doubt. The moment you even decide to share your secrets, doubt penetrates your mind.
The classic Keep your cards close to the chest rule. If the neighbors know you're summoning a legion, the magic is already dead.
It's the tension between the ego wanting credit and the ritual needing isolation. You can't be a master if you're too busy being a performer.
So we're picking up right where he leaves off with that warning about secrecy. He says that the very desire to discuss your work with the uninitiated, the unproven, is already proof of your own insecurity.
Ouch. He's basically calling out anyone who posts a ritual photo on Instagram.
Exactly. He says it's a need for self-affirmation. He argues that your relationship with a demon or an angel or an elemental is sacred and personal. He actually tells the reader to study the entity, ask others who have had similar relationships with it, but then, and this is the kicker, to treat that information like a secret of a close friend that you swore never to reveal.
I love that. It's so intimate. It's not about building a database. It's about building a bond.
But then he takes this intimacy and turns it into something much more aggressive.
Right? He pivots. He moves from keep your secrets to how to invoke your own omnipotence. And he uses a very specific, very provocative phrase here. He says the best way for an evoker to open their sense of omnipotence is to act not in the manifestation of their holiness or compassion, but in the manifestation of their power.
Wait, what? Not holiness or compassion? That's a direct shot at almost every major religious tradition.
It's a total reversal. Usually you're told to be humble, to be good. He's saying no, be strong, be effective.
And he backs it up with this claim that as you succeed as one ritual follows another, all your rational attempts to dismiss it as coincidence just melt away like smoke. He says you realize you possess power and that you are the embodiment of power.
And that's why people flee back to Orthodox religion, right? Because the alternative is too much to handle.
Yeah, he says the successes make neophytes run back to the arms of traditional religion or just forget magic is even fun and amusing until the moment the summoned spirits actually show up and the universe starts obeying your commands.
The universe, smiling and beginning to obey. It sounds like a god complex in a manual.
I mean, if it works. Does it matter if it's a god complex? If the stars start moving when I say so, I'm not complaining.
But he tries to ground this power with a specific practice. He says you need a meditation that balances humility before infinite power with the confidence to command it.
But look at the setup he requires. It's so austere. He says you need a place that is isolated from the rest of the world. No furniture, no decorations on the walls, no windows, just one single door.
So, a very expensive, very empty closet.
He calls it a vacuum in space, untouched and untouchable. And then he gives the actual instructions. He says, sit in a chair in the center of the room, facing north. Close your eyes and wait 30 seconds to get used to the new sensations.
He's literally guiding us through the breathing. Focus on the sensation of the air entering your mouth, your throat, your lungs. He wants you to feel the expansion of your chest.
It's a way to ground the body before the ascension part starts.
Exactly. And then he moves the focus from the body to the environment. He tells you to look with eyes open or close at the airborne space around you. He says to visualize tiny particles of air as microscopic prisms catching the light, glowing like tiny suns.
He's asking us to hallucinate 1,000,000 tiny suns in the middle of an empty room.
But he preempts that. He says, do not expect to see this with your ordinary vision, but let the awareness of it penetrate your mind, even if your rational mind tries to shake your confidence. He's literally telling you to ignore your own skepticism.
It's that subjective synthesis again. He's trying to bypass the rational part of the brain that Jane is clinging to. He wants you to know it's real even if you can't see it.
And then it gets intense. He says to feel the heat of this light, to feel it pulsing in the air. He wants you to breathe this light in until the air itself becomes light.
And here's the final instruction of this Chuck. He tells you to breathe the light into your lungs, into your torso, to let it tickle your insides. But, and this is the important part for the clearing, as you exhale, you aren't exhaling the light. You are exhaling your anxieties, fears, guilt, and any negative energies.
He wants you to visualize it as a brown, oily haze.
That's a gross image.
But it's a functional one. He's setting the stage. You clear out the oil, you fill yourself with the light, and then you're ready to meet the things he was talking about earlier. The frenzied rabbits and the commanding gods. Okay, let's look at where that light goes. He's describing the exhale now. He says this dark, oily haze, all that anxiety and fear, it's literally being purged. It seeps from your mouth as you breathe out.
In the light that stays in the room, he says it's pure light that can't be stained. It just dissolves that junk the moment it leaves you.
Sounds like a very intense detox. Forget juice cleanses, just breathe in divine radiance.
But look, he's pushing it further. He says the light is healing your organs and tissues, purifying your blood and your heart. He actually uses a biblical reference here, the woman who was healed of her bleeding by touching the hem of Jesus' garment. He wants you to feel that same healing power entering you with every breath.
And no matter how much you breathe, the light in the room will not diminish, because it is an overflowing source of power and light. That's a heavy promise.
It's beautiful, but then he shifts. He says when you feel like you can't contain it anymore, you have to turn your gaze inward.
Yeah, and this is where the subjective synthesis gets real. He says you should feel this light inside you, shining like 1,000 suns. He describes it bursting out through your skin, not bound by your flesh, but free for creation.
Free for creation. Spoken like a true architect.
He's getting very physical about it, though. He says you'll feel a tingling of the skin. That's the pure light of creation emanating from you. He even suggests it's more intense in your face, your hands, and your palms.
And then he hits the heart. He says the light pours from your center, streaming from your heart like an infinite fountain of love.
Okay, that sounds lovely, but wait, look at what he says about your hands. Let your hands hang at your sides, palms up, fingers naturally curled upward. He says the power is just waiting there, waiting to be directed.
And here's the pivot back to that power versus compassion thing we were just talking about. He says once this flow is clearly tangible, you take a deep breath, hold it, and realize this is the same power and wisdom that created the universes.
Talk about an ego boost. You contain the power of the Big Bang in your chest cavity.
Eat your tingshid.
But wait, look at the warning. He says you can use this to issue any command with no shadow of fear and everything will obey. But, and this is the kicker, he says, do not let the feelings of bliss and meekness overcome you.
Because that's the trap?
Exactly. He says the bliss is the most debilitating effect of this state. It makes you weak. Instead, he tells you to let those blissful emotions flow out of your hands, your eyes, your mouth, spreading the light into the darkness of the lower worlds.
So, don't get too cozy with the feeling of being a saint, or you'll lose your edge.
He wants you to use the light to subjugate, subjugating everything there to the power of your will. It's back to the command. It's back to the architect.
And then he describes this discharge. He says you might feel an impulse to do something dramatic like a Pentecostal dance, or something as simple as a whispered thank you. But he warns you, don't waste this electrifying power on trivial things. Don't use the generator that lights the stars just to power a desk lamp.
It's so much pressure. He says to do this release, to exhale everything until you feel exhausted.
He says it feels like the exhausted lightness you get after intense sexual intercourse.
Well, there it is, bringing it back to the physical, as always.
He's certainly not shy about the biology of it.
But he says this, exhaustion is necessary. It cleanses you of the light you've inhaled, so you can prepare for the actual evocation. He says, do this once a day, and the power will grow until you can stand adequately in the presence of your divine self.
And then we move into the tools. And honestly, this is where I start to roll where I really start to get skeptical.
You're looking at the armory. He starts listing all these elaborate, expensive-looking ritual tools. Robes inspired by ancient Egypt or Judea, embroidered with numerological symbols.
Here we go. The theatrical part.
He describes an altar made of 2 square boxes, a table of union with Enochian words in different colors, 4 elemental tables on the walls, a ritual wand, a dagger, a double-edged yellow dagger inscribed with Hebrew names,
and a wand with a wooden handle, magnetized wire, and an acorn-shaped knob painted yellow and red. This sounds like a high-end magic shop catalog.
It's so much. He's talking about silk draperings, crystal headbands, even sandals made of actual camel hair.
I mean, if you can find a camel hair, go for it. I'm sure it really helps with the subjective synthesis.
But, and this is the important part, he actually addresses that. He says, from a rational and sober point of view, all these extravagant ritual tools have no value in themselves.
Really? He's debunking his own list?
He is. He says that theatrical beauty is for the sake of tradition, not practical necessity. But, and here's the loop. Back to the beginning, he argues that for someone pursuing spiritual goals, these trinkets are necessary because they fulfilled a second principle of evocation, using a proven working system.
So the tools aren't the magic. They're the training wheels for the master.
Exactly. They are the long preparation to help you reach that state of omnipotence he was talking about. He's saying the ritual is the process of building the I that is capable of commanding the universe.
Oh, hang on, I hear a doorbell. The Korean food is here.
Yes. Thank God I'm absolutely starving.